Okay, so I have this game, this task, and a lot of time to waste. If I'm going to make realistic transitions, the first thing I need to do is go and listen to some. So, with the consideration of my oversized Steam library, I chose 2 games to playtest. The first of the 2 games I played was The Witcher 3. The Witcher 3 is a fantasy action role-playing game where you play Geralt of Rivia. You'd know this if you've seen the Netflix series. Great watch, by the way. And you follow classic RPG formula and run around a big map and kill big bad enemies. Now, I don't really care about that. I only care about the music content. Despite some interesting shenanigans, there were 2 places that had interesting transitions. That right there is a good example of a brute force transition to a cutscene. The percussive hit masks the need to fade from the previously looping element so that the cutscene can start right away. It's good, but not quite what I'm looking for. The second time I noticed a transition between music was in the wild. Something I noticed about this transition after recreating it a few too many times was that even though it was just a seemingly simple crossfade when the player triggers the new area, there was a delay between triggering the area and the music fading in. Listening to the transition again let me realise that it seems like there are multiple points on the track that can fade based on a condition being met. This caught my attention. So I opened up Wwise, realised that I wanted to know what to try to imitate at least, and then went into Unreal Engine 4 and made a simple blueprint to fade between zones 1 and 2 whenever you walk into them. With that out of the way, I then opened Wwise, and with the help of Audiokinetic's YouTube channel, started to have a play around with it. Firstly, I've got a music switch container, a music playlist containers for both zones. Both of their respective tracks are placed on the sequence continuous so that they can loop indefinitely. I've got a music state set up with zones 1 and 2 listed as states. That being done, I can click this button here, add pathways that Wwise can use to determine what state plays what sound. Now that's done, I can set up the transition rules. Add 2 rules, I make it so that there's a transition rule for both directions of the transition I want to apply. I also want a 3rd and 4th transition rule to account for the blueprinted Zone 3 elements. To imitate the transition rules I found in The Witcher, I needed to have my audio file set up like this, where you can see the custom cues along the tracks that I placed in sections I thought were musical, then we apply the cues to the transition rules, set up the fade in, fade out, and we're done. Let's get this into Unreal. Event, sound bank, drag, generate. Okay, we've created the Audiokinetic bank, now we just have to go into Unreal Engine, create the sound bank, then create the event, generate the sound, and make a blueprint to start the event when you play the game. Thankfully, we can now hear the cues working as intended, so I can stop breaking my tea mugs, and instead, we can focus on the second game, Divinity 2 Original Sin, which is a turn-based role-playing game where you, again, don't care about anything but the music content. The transition in the world was a rather boring immediate fade out, fade in, but right at the start of my gameplay I saw something I absolutely had to use, a kind of condition met equals play new track system, and I wanted to test creating the entire system inside the engine. It sounds simple at first, but this system gave me hell. Firstly, I coded a button animation for when the player interacts with the button, pasted that in 4 more times, and assigned each button its own unique ID. To interact with the button, when triggering key button is pressed, the game traces a line from the character's head, and if it connects with the blueprint that uses the interface for the button, the action goes through to the button blueprint, which then triggers the animation. In order to then get this interaction to trigger an event in the level, I had to create event dispatchers that would be bound to custom events in the level blueprint based on the unique button ID that would then trigger a system to adjust the volume of the additive track based on whether or not the game thought it was playing. And after much pain and debugging, it started to work, and it sounded great. Thanks for sticking around until the end. It means a lot. This game is actually playable and ready for download, so if it does interest you or you'd like to hear more of the music, feel free to try it out for yourself. As for me, I'm signing off. Sayonara!